Millionaire is ridiculed for falling in love with a waitress. But fate takes a twist. New York City buzzed with life as it always did. At 28, Elena had mastered the art of balancing multiple plates with a smile that seemed to brighten even the dreariest mornings. Her dark brown hair was usually tied back in a ponytail, and her hazel eyes sparkled with a warmth that made every customer feel seen. Elena's life, however, was far from easy. She had grown up in Queens, the daughter of immigrant parents who worked tirelessly to provide a better future for their children. Tragically, her parents passed away in a car accident when Elena was just 20, leaving her as the sole guardian of her younger brother, Matteo. Matteo, now 16, was Elena's world. Diagnosed with a chronic illness that required regular treatment, he depended on her both emotionally and financially. To cover the mounting medical bills, Elena worked long hours at Crescent Moon Café in New York City and took on part-time cleaning jobs on weekends. Despite her challenges, Elena never let life's hardships dim her optimism. She had a knack for finding joy in small things: a well-brewed cup of coffee, a stranger's unexpected kindness, or the laughter of her brother. "She's got the heart of a lion," her coworker and best friend Mia often said, "and she's tougher than anyone I know." Meanwhile, in the skyscrapers towering over Manhattan, Jack Carter, a 35-year-old tech mogul, sat in his sleek corner office. The world knew him as a genius entrepreneur, the man behind one of the most successful tech startups of the decade. Jack had it all: a sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, a collection of luxury cars, and a bank account that most people could only dream of. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, Jack felt an emptiness he couldn't quite name. His success had come at a cost. In the cutthroat world of business, he had learned to distrust those around him. Friends seemed more interested in his wealth than his well-being, and the women he dated often viewed him as a status symbol rather than a person. At night, Jack would sit alone in his penthouse, staring at the glittering cityscape, wondering if this was all life had to offer. One chilly November morning, Jack found himself wandering into Crescent Moon Café. He wasn't sure why he had chosen it. Perhaps it was the cozy exterior or the promise of anonymity in a place so far removed from his usual haunts. As he entered, the bell above the door jingled softly, and Elena greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning. Table for one?" Jack nodded, surprised by the genuine kindness in her tone. He took a seat by the window, ordered a coffee, and observed the world around him. The cafe was bustling, but it felt like a refuge, a world apart from the polished, sterile environments he was used to. Over the next few weeks, Jack found himself returning to Crescent Moon more and more. It became a ritual. Every morning before heading to his office, he would stop by for a cup of coffee and a few moments of peace. Elena noticed the quiet man who had become a regular. He always sat at the same table, often lost in thought, and his orders were as straightforward as his demeanor. "You must really like the coffee here," Elena remarked one day as she refilled his cup. Jack looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "It's not just the coffee. This place, it feels different." Elena tilted her head, curious. "Different how?" "It's real," Jack replied after a pause. "There's no pretense here, just good coffee and good people." Elena laughed softly. "Well, that's the goal. Life's tough enough without pretending, right?" Jack found himself nodding, her words resonating in a way he hadn't expected. Their conversations began to stretch beyond coffee refills. Elena would ask Jack about his day, and he would, in turn, inquire about hers. She told him about Matteo's love for comic books and her dream of one day opening her own cafe. Jack, feeling uncharacteristically comfortable, shared glimpses of his own life, the pressures of running a company, the loneliness that came with success. For Elena, Jack was a mystery. He seemed kind, but guarded, as though he carried the weight of something he couldn't share. For Jack, Elena was a revelation, someone who spoke with honesty and warmth, untainted by the superficiality he had come to expect from people. Though neither of them realized it, a bond was beginning to form. Jack found himself looking forward to his mornings at the cafe, not just for the coffee, but for the brief moments of connection with Elena. For Elena, Jack was a reminder that kindness could reach anyone, no matter how distant or closed off they seemed. In the heart of New York City, amidst the chaos and noise, two lives that couldn't have been more different were beginning to intertwine, setting the stage for a love story that would challenge them both in ways they could never have imagined. Jack's daily visits to Crescent Moon Café became a grounding ritual amidst the whirlwind of his life. At first, he had simply enjoyed the comforting atmosphere and the brief respite from his demanding schedule. But over time, it was Elena who became the reason he returned so often. She moved through the cafe with an effortless grace, greeting customers by name and remembering their preferences. Her laugh, soft and melodic, would echo warmly through the room, lifting the spirits of even the weariest patrons. Jack found himself watching her more closely, how she always crouched to speak with the children who came in with their parents, how she comforted a regular customer who had lost his wife, or how her smile never faltered, even on the busiest mornings. Her presence was magnetic, but it wasn't just her kindness that intrigued Jack. It was her resilience. Elena had noticed Jack too. He wasn't like most of the cafe's customers who hurriedly ordered their coffee before rushing out the door. Jack lingered, sipping his drink slowly as if savoring every moment. But Elena wasn't quick to assume the best about him. In her experience, wealthy customers often looked down on people like her, seeing her job as insignificant, her dreams as trivial. So she kept her distance, offering him the same polite warmth she gave every customer. But Jack wasn't deterred. He began asking her little questions. How was her day? Did she have a favorite coffee blend? Slowly, Elena found herself relaxing, her guard lowering inch by inch. One evening, as the cafe prepared to close, Jack stayed later than usual, quietly typing on his laptop at his favorite corner table. Elena approached him with a fresh cup of coffee. "On the house," she said with a smile. Jack looked up, surprised. "What's the occasion?" "You've been working hard," Elena replied, gesturing to his laptop. "Everyone deserves a little break." Jack chuckled softly. "You sound like someone who knows a thing or two about hard work." Elena hesitated, then nodded. "It's all I've ever known." Something in her tone made Jack curious, but he didn't press. Instead, he said, "You make it look easy." Her laugh was soft but genuine. "Trust me, it's not." That brief exchange opened the door to longer conversations. Jack began to learn more about Elena, her love for baking, her dream of owning her own cafe, and her devotion to her younger brother, Matteo. "Elena," he said one morning, "you've got more determination than half the CEOs I know." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment or a backhanded way of saying I'm stubborn?" Jack laughed. "It's a compliment, trust me." Elena couldn't help but smile, but her instinctive caution lingered. Who was this man who seemed genuinely interested in her life? Jack, for his part, found himself drawn to Elena in a way he couldn't ignore. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, genuine, selfless, and full of a quiet strength that he deeply admired. One day, as they talked about their favorite books, Jack said, "I'd like to know more about you, Elena, outside of this cafe." Elena blinked, startled. "Are you asking me out?" Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. Dinner, maybe. Nothing fancy, just, time to talk without interruptions." Elena looked at him skeptically. "I don't do well with fancy restaurants, just so you know." Jack smiled. "Perfect. Neither do I." A week later, They met at a small Italian bistro tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Jack arrived early, nervously checking his watch, a feeling that surprised him. He was used to boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, yet the thought of dinner with Elena made him feel like a nervous teenager. When Elena walked in, wearing a simple dress and a shy smile, Jack felt his breath catch. She looked beautiful, but it was the ease in her demeanor that captivated him most. The evening was filled with laughter and candid conversation. They spoke about their childhoods, their dreams, and their fears. Jack told her about his struggles with loneliness despite his success, while Elena shared stories about her parents and her determination to give Matteo the life he deserved. By the time dessert arrived, Jack knew one thing for certain. He didn't just like Elena, he respected her. For Elena, the evening was a revelation. Jack wasn't the arrogant, self-absorbed millionaire she had assumed him to be. He was kind, thoughtful, and deeply human in his vulnerability. Still, a part of her worried about where this was heading. "I'm just a waitress," she thought to herself. "What does someone like him see in me?" Jack seemed to sense her hesitation. "Elena," he said softly, "I know my world looks different from yours, but it's not as far apart as you think. You're one of the most genuine people I've ever met. I don't want to lose that." His words disarmed her, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that his intentions might be real. Their connection deepened in the weeks that followed. Jack would stop by the cafe not just for coffee, but for the chance to see Elena. She, in turn, began looking forward to his visits, her heart lifting every time he walked through the door. Their conversations grew more personal, their laughter more frequent. What began as casual curiosity was evolving into something neither of them had expected. One evening, as they strolled through Central Park after dinner, Jack turned to Elena. "I know this might sound crazy," he began, "but I feel like meeting you has been the best thing to happen to me in a long time." Elena looked at him, her eyes searching his. "Why me, Jack? Of all the people in your world, why me?" Jack smiled, his voice steady. "Because you're the only one who makes me feel like I belong." For the first time in years, Elena let herself believe in the possibility of love that wasn't about status or appearances, but about two souls finding solace in each other. In the bustling chaos of New York City, amidst the clinking coffee cups and glowing skyscrapers, a millionaire and a waitress had found something rare. A connection that felt real. It didn't take long for Jack's inner circle to notice the changes in his routine. He wasn't attending as many high-profile events, his phone wasn't buzzing with texts about glamorous parties, and, most surprisingly, he seemed genuinely content. One evening, during a private dinner at an exclusive Manhattan club, Jack's closest friend Ryan leaned in with a knowing smirk. "So, what's the deal, Jack? You've been off the grid lately," Ryan said, swirling his glass of scotch. Jack hesitated but decided to share. "I've been spending time with someone," he said simply. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Someone special, huh? Finally ditching the business-only lifestyle?" Jack smiled faintly, thinking of Elena's laugh and the way she brought warmth to his days. "Her name's Elena. She's different." "Different how?" Ryan pressed. "She's not from our world," Jack admitted. "She's a waitress." The room fell silent for a beat before Ryan burst into laughter. "A waitress? You're serious?" Ryan said, shaking his head. "Come on, Jack, you're a millionaire. What could you possibly have in common with someone like that?" The news of Jack's relationship with Elena spread quickly among his circle. His so-called friends didn't bother hiding their opinions, and the judgment was swift and merciless. "She's probably after his money," one woman sneered during a cocktail party. "Do you really think she'd look twice at him if he weren't rich?" "I give it a month," another man joked. "Once she gets what she wants, she'll disappear." "Huh?" Jack overheard some of these conversations, and though he outwardly dismissed them, Their words planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Meanwhile, Elena was beginning to feel the weight of judgment from her own world. Her co-workers at Crescent Moon Café had always been her support system, but now they looked at her with thinly veiled suspicion. "So," Mia said one morning as they worked the register together, "you and Mr. Fancy Coffee are a thing now." Elena flushed. "We've been spending time together," she said cautiously. "Be careful," Mia warned. "Guys like him don't stick around. They get bored and move on." Elena couldn't ignore the whispers that followed her around the cafe, or the way some customers looked at her, as if she were a charity case being rescued by Jack. Even strangers seemed to have opinions. One afternoon, while walking through the park with Jack, they were approached by a well-dressed woman who glanced at Elena dismissively before saying to Jack, "I didn't know you were into charity work now." Elena's heart sank, but she forced a smile, determined not to let the comment show how much it hurt. As the pressure mounted, Jack found himself grappling with doubts he never thought he'd have. He adored Elena, her warmth, her honesty, her strength, but the incessant chatter from his friends began to seep into his thoughts. During a late-night phone call, Ryan's voice echoed in his ear. "Jack, you need to wake up. She's using you. How do you know she's not just playing the long game?" Jack tried to brush it off, but the question lingered. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, he found himself sitting alone in his penthouse, staring at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The doubts crept in. What if they're right? What if she's with me because of what I can give her? For Elena, the judgment was relentless. Every interaction seemed laced with condescension, and even her brother Matteo noticed. "You're quiet," Matteo said one evening as they ate dinner together. "Ah," Eleanor sighed. "It's just... people are saying things about me and Jack, like I don't deserve to be with him." Matteo frowned. "Do you love him?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. I think I do. But it's hard, Matteo. People like him, they don't belong with people like me. You've always told me that what matters is who someone is on the inside," Matteo said. "So why can't you believe that for yourself?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe Matteo, but the weight of the world's judgment felt impossible to bear. The tension between them came to a head one evening when Jack, in a moment of vulnerability, brought up the topic of trust. "Elaine," he began cautiously, "I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll understand where I'm coming from." Elena looked at him warily. "What is it? Do you ever think about what people are saying about us?" he asked. "About how different our lives are?" Elena's heart sank. "Are you asking if I'm with you because of your money?" Jack hesitated, and that moment of pause shattered something inside her. "I can't believe this," Elena said, standing up. "After everything, you're doubting me?" "Elena, it's not about you," Jack tried to explain. "It's about everyone else. What they're saying, how it's affecting us." Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't trust me, Jack. And if you can't trust me, then this won't work." She left before he could respond, the door closing behind her with a finality that echoed through the empty room. For days, Jack replayed the conversation in his mind, tormented by the realization that he had hurt the one person who had shown him genuine care. He tried calling Elena, but she didn't answer. Elena, meanwhile, threw herself into work, determined to block out the pain. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't forget Jack, the way he made her laugh, the way he looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. Both of them were trapped in their own doubts and insecurities, unsure of how to move forward. Despite the distance between them, neither Jack nor Elena could let go of what they had shared. Deep down, Jack knew he had made a mistake by letting others' opinions cloud his judgment, and Elena, despite her heartbreak, couldn't deny the love she still felt for him. Unbeknownst to each other, both were on the brink of realizing that their connection was worth fighting for, no matter what the world had to say about it. The first challenge in their relationship had tested their bond, but it was far from the end of their story. In fact, it was just the beginning of a journey that would redefine their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with opulence. Glittering chandeliers cast a golden glow over the sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Jack had reluctantly agreed to host the charity gala, a fixture of New York's elite social calendar. It was the kind of event he usually loathed, but felt obligated to attend as a prominent figure in the city's business world. This time, however, he had Elena by his side. She wore a simple but elegant emerald green dress, her hair swept into a soft updo. Despite her radiant smile, Elena couldn't shake the nervousness tightening her chest. She wasn't used to this world, and the whispers and sideways glances from Jack's peers only heightened her unease. Jack noticed her discomfort and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You belong here, Elena," he said softly. "Don't let them make you think otherwise." As the evening wore on, Jack was pulled into a conversation with several business partners. Elena found herself standing by the refreshment table, nursing a glass of champagne and feeling out of place. A group of Jack's friends, including Ryan, approached her with thinly veiled disdain. "So," Ryan began, his voice dripping with mock politeness, "you're the famous Elena we've heard so much about." Elena offered a polite smile. I suppose so." Another woman in the group, dressed in an ostentatious sequined gown, smirked. "You're very brave, you know. It must take a lot of confidence to step into a world like this." Elena felt the sting in the woman's words, but maintained her composure. "I'm here because Jack invited me. That's all that matters." Ryan chuckled, swirling his drink. Oh, of course. But let's be honest, this must feel like hitting the jackpot for someone like you. A waitress, landing a millionaire? It's like something out of a romance novel." The group erupted in laughter, their mocking tone cutting deeper than they realized. Elena's cheeks burned, her grip tightening on her glass. "I care about Jack for who he is, not what he has," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Sure you do," Ryan said with a smirk. "But come on, Elena. Let's not pretend this isn't a step up for you. You must be thrilled to leave all that coffee slinging behind." At that moment, Jack approached the group, having caught the tail end of Ryan's remark. His jaw tightened as he took in Elena's stricken expression. "What's going on here?" Jack asked sharply, his tone cutting through the laughter. Ryan shrugged, feigning innocence. "Just getting to know your companion better." Elena turned to Jack, her eyes filled with hurt. "I think I've had enough for tonight," she said quietly, setting down her glass. "Elena, wait," Jack said, reaching for her arm, but she pulled away. "I can't do this, Jack," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't belong here." Before Jack could respond, she walked away, the sound of her heels echoing through the ballroom as she disappeared into the night. Jack caught up with Elena outside the hotel, where she stood by the curb trying to hail a cab. The crisp night air bit at his face, but he barely noticed. "Elena, please don't go," he pleaded. "I'm sorry for what they said. They don't know you. They don't understand." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "But you do, Jack. You know who I am, and you let them treat me like this anyway. I didn't know they—" "You didn't stop them," Elena interrupted. "You stood there and let them humiliate me." Jack's shoulders slumped under the weight of her words. I made a mistake. Let me fix this. Let me show you that you're the only person who matters to me." Elena shook her head. "This isn't about them, Jack. It's about us. I can't be the reason you're constantly fighting against your world. It's not fair to you." She stepped into the waiting cab, her final words echoing in Jack's ears as the car pulled away. Goodbye, Jack. For the first time in years, Jack felt truly powerless. He returned to the ballroom, but the glittering lights and laughter felt hollow. He excused himself and left, retreating to his penthouse, where he spent the night replaying the evening's events. His heart ached with guilt. He had promised to protect Elena, to shield her from the very judgment she had endured tonight. Yet, when the moment came, he had failed her. Jack stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, staring at the city lights. For the first time, he questioned the people he had surrounded himself with, the friends who valued wealth over character, appearances over substance. Elena deserved better, he thought. She deserved someone who would stand by her no matter what. In the days that followed, Jack avoided his usual social circles, distancing himself from the toxic influence of people like Ryan. He began reflecting on his life, questioning the values he had once taken for granted. Elena's absence left a void he couldn't ignore. She had shown him a world beyond the superficial, a world filled with genuine connection and warmth. Losing her made him realize just how much she had changed his life and how much he needed to make things right. Jack knew one thing for certain. If he ever had the chance to win Elena back, he would fight for her with everything he had. But first, he needed to become the kind of man who deserved her. Jack sat alone in his penthouse, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. For days he had replayed the scene of Elena leaving the gala, her tearful face haunting him. The hurt in her eyes had been a stark reminder of how much he had failed her. Determined to make things right, Jack made a decision. He needed to change, not for Elena, but for himself, to become the kind of man who didn't tolerate cruelty, even from those he had once called friends. He began by cutting ties with Ryan and the others who had humiliated Elena. When Ryan called to apologize, more out of self-preservation than genuine regret, Jack didn't mince words. "You don't get to treat people like that and expect to stay in my life," Jack said firmly, before ending the call. Next, he turned his focus inward, spending his evenings reading books on philosophy and self-improvement, and volunteering at a local youth center to better understand the struggles of others. For the first time, Jack began to see his privilege, not as a shield, but as a responsibility. After weeks of reflection, Jack mustered the courage to reach out to Elena. He found her at Crescent Moon Café, wiping down tables during a quiet afternoon shift. Elena," he began softly. She turned, her expression guarded. "Jack, I came to apologize," he said, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. "For everything. For not standing up for you. For letting my so-called friends hurt you." Elena shook her head, her tone resolute. "It's too late, Jack. I told you, I can't be the reason you're constantly fighting with the people in your life." "They're not in my life anymore," Jack admitted. "I cut them off." Elena's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "That doesn't change the fact that we're from two different worlds. You need someone who fits into your life, someone who won't make things harder for you." Jack took a deep breath. You're wrong, Elena. I don't need someone who fits into my life. I need someone who makes my life worth living. And that's you." But Elena's walls were still up. She shook her head again, her voice soft but firm. "I can't do this, Jack. Please, just let me go." Though her words stung, Jack refused to give up. He realized that Elena's resistance wasn't because she didn't care for him. It was because she didn't believe their relationship could work. Jack decided to take a different approach. If Elena wouldn't let him back into her life directly, he would find another way to show her how much she meant to him. He began by learning more about her life outside of the cafe. Through subtle inquiries with Mia, her co-worker, Jack discovered the depth of Elena's devotion to her younger brother, Matteo. Matteo's medical condition required expensive treatments, something Elena had been working tirelessly to afford. Jack realized this was an opportunity to not only help Elena, but also prove his intentions were genuine. Using his connections, Jack reached out to a renowned pediatric specialist in New York and arranged for Mateo to receive the best care available. He quietly covered the costs of Mateo's treatment, ensuring that Elena wouldn't have to struggle with the financial burden any longer. When Elena found out, she was furious. She confronted Jack outside the cafe, her voice shaking with anger. "Would you do this without telling me?" she demanded. "I don't need your charity, Jack." "It's not charity," Jack replied, his tone calm but earnest. "It's love. I did it because I care about you, and because Mateo deserves a chance to live without limitations." Elena stared at him, torn between frustration and gratitude. "You can't just fix everything with money," she said quietly. "I know that," Jack admitted. "But this isn't about money. It's about showing you that I see you, Elena. I see the sacrifices you've made, the strength it takes to carry everything on your shoulders. And I want to help, not because I think you need saving, but because you deserve someone who's willing to stand beside you." For the first time, Elena saw the depth of Jack's transformation. He wasn't the same man who had let his friends belittle her at the gala. This Jack was thoughtful, selfless, and willing to fight for her in ways she hadn't expected. But she wasn't ready to let her guard down completely. "It's going to take more than gestures, Jack," she said. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady. "I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." As he walked away, Elena couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. For the first time since their breakup, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. In the weeks that followed, Jack continued to support Mateo's treatment, visiting him at the clinic and bringing him comic books to pass the time. Mateo, in turn, became a bridge between Jack and Elena, often urging his sister to give Jack another chance. "Jack isn't like the people you're scared of," Mateo said one evening. "He's different, Elena, and I think he really loves you." Elena knew her brother was right. But she also knew that opening her heart again would mean risking the pain she had worked so hard to avoid. Still, she couldn't deny the change she saw in Jack, or the lingering feelings she had for him. The question now was whether she was ready to let him back in. Elena sat on the small balcony of her modest apartment, the cool evening breeze ruffling her hair. She gazed out at the city lights, her thoughts tangled in memories of Jack. Despite her efforts to distance herself from him, his presence in her life lingered, through Mateo's stories about Jack's visits to the clinic, through the changes she'd seen in him, and, most of all, through the love she still felt, but was afraid to acknowledge. Mateo, sitting nearby with a comic book Jack had brought him, broke the silence. "You know, he's not like the people you're worried about," Mateo said, without looking up from the pages. Elena sighed. "It's not that simple, Mateo." "But it is," Mateo insisted. "He didn't just help me because he wanted to impress you. He cares. About me, about you, and I think you care about him too." Elena didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. Deep down, she knew Mateo was right. A few days later, Elena was cleaning up at the cafe after closing when she heard a knock on the door. Turning, she saw Jack standing outside, his hands in his pockets and an uncertain expression on his face. Her heart skipped a beat, but she steadied herself before unlocking the door. "Jack, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone guarded. I needed to see you," he said simply. Elena crossed her arms. "I thought we said everything there was to say." "Maybe you did," Jack replied, "but I haven't, and I need you to hear me out." Jack stepped inside, his usual air of confidence replaced by a quiet humility. "Elena," he began, "I know I've hurt you, and I know I've made mistakes, but these past few months have changed me. You've changed me." Elena tilted her head, skeptical. "Jack, I'm not looking for grand gestures or promises. I need something real." That's exactly what I'm offering, Jack said earnestly. When I met you, I thought I understood what love was. But you showed me how wrong I was. You taught me that love isn't about appearances or convenience. It's about seeing someone for who they truly are and valuing them beyond measure. His voice cracked slightly, but he pressed on. You made me realize that my world, the wealth, the status, it's all meaningless without someone like you to share it with. Elena's composure began to waver. She saw the sincerity in Jack's eyes, the vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to see. I don't know if I can do this again, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared, Jack. Scared of being hurt. Scared of not being enough for you. Jack stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. Elena, you've always been enough, more than enough. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you if you'll let me. Jack took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena Morales, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside him. You are the most incredible person I've ever met. You've taught me what it means to love selflessly, to live with purpose. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. Will you marry me? Tears filled Elena's eyes as she stared at Jack, her heart pounding. For a moment, she was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. You're serious, she said finally, a statement rather than a question. Jack nodded. More than I've ever been about anything. Elena took a shaky breath, her heart warring with her mind. She thought of all the reasons to say no, the doubts, the fears, the barriers between their worlds. But then she thought of all the reasons to say yes. The kindness he had shown to Mateo, the changes he had made in his life, the way he looked at her as if she were the only thing that mattered. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, Jack, I'll marry you. A radiant smile spread across Jack's face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. As Jack pulled her into his arms, Elena felt a wave of emotions, relief, joy, and above all, hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in their future, a life built not on wealth or status, but on love and mutual respect. I promise you, Jack said softly, his voice steady with conviction, I'll never let you down again. Elena rested her head against his chest, letting the warmth of his embrace soothe the doubts that had haunted her. She realized that Jack had truly changed, not for her, but because of her. That night, as they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets of New York, Elena couldn't help but smile. They had faced so many challenges, but in the end, love had prevailed. And for the first time, she felt not just loved, but truly understood. Jack and Elena's wedding was far from the grandiose affair one might expect of a millionaire. Instead, it was an intimate ceremony, held in a charming garden in New York, surrounded by their closest friends and family. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and love, a reflection of the couple's journey. Elena wore a simple but elegant dress, her radiant smile making her the most beautiful woman in Jack's eyes. Mateo stood proudly by her side, his health much improved thanks to Jack's efforts. As Jack exchanged vows with Elena, his voice steady but full of emotion, he promised not only to love her, but also to honor the lessons she had taught him about humility, kindness, and the true meaning of life. Their union marked the beginning of a new chapter, one built on trust, respect, and a shared vision for the future. After the wedding, Jack and Elena decided to leave behind the glittering social scene that had once defined Jack's life. Instead, they focused on creating a life filled with purpose. Elena had always dreamed of helping those in need, and Jack, inspired by her compassion, proposed an idea. Together, they would establish a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged individuals and families. The Hope and Heart Foundation was born, offering scholarships, medical support, and housing assistance to those struggling to make ends meet. Elena took charge of the day-to-day operations, working closely with the people the foundation served. Her warmth and empathy made her beloved in the community. Jack, meanwhile, used his connections and resources to fund and expand the foundation's reach. For the first time, his wealth felt like a tool for good rather than a source of isolation. Despite their success with the foundation, Jack and Elena chose to live simply. They moved into a cozy brownstone in Brooklyn, where they spent quiet evenings cooking dinner together and enjoying long walks in the park with Mateo and their adopted rescue dog, Bella. Elena also returned to Crescent Moon Café, not as a waitress but as a co-owner. She and Jack invested in the cafe, ensuring it would continue to be a welcoming space for the community. Every morning, Jack and Elena would visit the cafe, sitting at the same corner table where their story began. They shared coffee, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection, savoring the life they had built together. Their journey was far from ordinary, but it carried a universal truth. Love, when rooted in authenticity and mutual respect, can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Through their struggles, Jack learned that wealth and success mean nothing without meaningful connections, while Elena discovered that true love could bridge the gap between two seemingly different worlds. Their story became a source of inspiration, reminding others that the value of a person lies not in their status or possessions, but in their heart and character. One sunny afternoon, Jack and Elena returned to Crescent Moon Café for its grand reopening under Elena's co-ownership. The cafe had been updated with a fresh coat of paint and new furniture, but its cozy charm remained intact. As they sat at their familiar table, surrounded by the hum of happy customers, Jack reached across the table to take Elena's hand. "This place," he said, his voice soft with emotion, "it's where everything started." Elena smiled, her eyes glistening. "And it's where we'll keep building everything that matters." Mateo entered the cafe a moment later, carrying a tray of pastries he had helped bake, his laughter filling the room. Bella wagged her tail excitedly at his heels. Jack and Elena looked at each other, their hearts full. Jack glanced out the window, watching people bustle by on the busy New York street. He no longer felt the emptiness that had once haunted him. Instead, he felt gratitude. Gratitude for Elena, for the life they had created, and for the love that had transformed him. Elena, too, felt a deep sense of peace. She had once believed that someone like Jack could never truly understand her world. But now she knew that their love had been worth every struggle, every tear. The story of Jack and Elena teaches us that love is not defined by wealth, status, or appearances. True love requires vulnerability, selflessness, and a willingness to grow together. Their journey reminds us that it's never too late to change, to choose kindness, and to find meaning in the connections we share with others. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the cafe. Jack and Lena sat side by side, their hands intertwined. Laughter filled the air as customers shared stories, children played, and Bella curled up contentedly under their table. In that moment, Jack and Elena knew they had found something rare and precious, a life built on love, understanding, and purpose. The camera fades out on their smiling faces, a symbol of hope and the power of love to transform lives. Thank you for watching this heartwarming tale of love and transformation. Jack and Elena's story reminds us all that true love is not about wealth or status, but about trust, growth, and genuine connection. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content that celebrates the beauty of human connections. Let us know in the comments what part of their journey resonated most with you. Remember, love can bridge any gap when it's built on understanding and compassion. See you next time.